Okay, and I just wanted to finish up my self-introduction saying that I live in Ishikawa Prefecture, where I divide my time between Kanazawa and Yamanaka Onsen. So.
And I'm Karen Hill Anton. I'm American, originally from New York City. I live in Shizuoka Prefecture in a rural part, and our area is Tenryu, which is actually the beginning of the foothills of the southern Japan Alps. I wrote for the Japan Times for a number of years, and in recent years I've published my memoir, The View from Breast Pocket Mountain, and a novel, A Thousand Graces. Both good reads, and there are copies upstairs if you want. Nice to see you all here this afternoon.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't use this.
So, let's go to slide 3. So, I'm just going to read this very briefly, and then we're going to kind of have a chat together. But probably most of us in this room have read books of literary correspondence by writers or other artists we admire. And we've probably done so for many of the same reasons. We're looking for inspiration, for some small overlap between our lives and the lives of our favorite authors, particularly when they were struggling to get published or find readers, a struggle that many of us here may be familiar with. Publishers recognize the appeal in these private conversations between famous writers and feed them to us, the public, in the form we most cherish, books. The genre of literary correspondence is surely known by all of us here, but even so, we'll start our presentation by discussing a few instances of it so that you'll have a clearer understanding of what we mean by literary correspondence, starting with the kind written by famous authors that thousands of people buy at bookstores and read, followed by a more commonplace version of it, such as that written by, let's say, less distinguished writers such as Karen and me. And we'll explain also why we feel there's value in it for ourselves and possibly also for you. All right. Okay, so Karen, do you want to start?
Okay, is this on? I have no idea. Hello, is that on? Okay. When David and I originally started talking about this, and I thought, what writers might I, like to introduce or think about introducing their correspondence, and I looked through my own bookshelves, and I didn't really have that much. I had Bertrand Russell, probably all of his selected letters, and I think it was, like there are 40 or 50,000 or something on record. And then I thought about Henry James, who was, in my younger years, one of my favorite writers and novelists. And he literally has volumes of letters, and his letters they're considered a big part of his literary contribution. And I didn't have any of the copies and went searching for them. I didn't want to purchase the books, but I was able to find them through the Gutenberg Project. And I began reading them and almost couldn't stop. That's just really just how good the letters were as literary works. In any case, he was known for, I would say, not just encouraging other writers who he was in touch with, and yet supporting them, but even when he didn't think a particular work was good, he would find something good to say about it. And perhaps when the other writer was practically ready to give up, Henry James was able to, I would say, spur them on so that they were able to continue to write. And one person commenting on his letters said, when you read these, you feel like you're meeting one of the most wonderful human beings in the world. That said, I was able to uncover an instance in his letters where his friend, the writer Hugh Walpole, says, Henry James told me gently that I was an idiot and that my novels were worthless. And I believed that. From his point of view, it must be so, and that if the world were full of people like Henry James, I should never publish a line. Walpole adds, thankfully, the world was not peopled with those who only see things as Henry James does. Of course, everyone knows Rainer Maria Rilke for his letters to a young poet. I must have read that when I was, 15 or 16 years old. But it's only in recent years that his letters to a young painter were translated and published, and this was to the painter, I think Balthus is the painter. Flannery O'Connor, I just chose her by chance, and the interesting fact about her, it's a correspondence, is that she wrote 600 letters to her mother, with whom she lived for 36 of her 39 years. I don't get it, but there must be something there. And Kurt Vonnegut, his collected letters are written over a 60-year period and contains letters of commiseration and encouragement. And he was writing to such literary lights like Bernard Malamud and Günter Grass. And these were people, published and recognized writers who also sometimes needed to have some encouragement and support. And I'll just quote the writer Evelyn Waugh, who said, "Beware of writing me, I always answer." And this made me reflect on my own feeling about writing. I love writing letters and have continued to do so long after letters with stamps on them have become extinct. But I can quote myself as saying, "No one I know will go to their graves saying Karen owes me a letter."
Yeah. So I've read quite a bit of literary correspondence as well. Most recently, though, I have been trying to delve into a book of correspondence between Yukio Mishima and Yasunari Kawabata. It's all in Japanese, and for me, it's very difficult, very slow going. So I haven't made as much progress in it as I had hoped to before this conference. But even so, I still find it very interesting to read. I have not found the sort of quotable lines that you might jot down on a sticky note and put above your writing desk, for example. But at the same time, reading their correspondence, which starts when Mishima is at a very young age, before he's firmly established himself as a famous writer, and of course Kawabata was a senior, and he showed a willingness to kind of lead Mishima along and to befriend him. And just reading, just sort of seeing glimpses, being able to see glimpses of their private selves, of their private lives, and what they chose to share with each other is, for me, even more inspirational than any quotable line that I might come up with. And when I think about the correspondences that I engage in with other writers, it's that kind of information that I also find inspiring. And I'm not saying that I am writing for those people at any moment, but just their willingness to share parts of themselves as writers, their writing journeys, those kinds of things, I think are just as inspiring too. And I think you can find those details, those inspirations very much just at looking at the day-to-day sort of existence that a lot of writers led. So, did you want to add anything?
Oh, no, that's good.
All right, so next one here. All right, correspondence versus social media engagement. Karen, I think you're more engaged on Facebook than I am. I am not a fan of social media, as anyone who happens to know me, you know, you probably realize that. I don't know that you are either, but you use Facebook a lot more than I do. I was wondering if you could distinguish just for yourself what the difference is between social media and correspondence.
Yeah, I'm kind of actually late to Facebook. You know, my children encouraged me to use it, and I thought, oh no, you know, I don't want friends, you know, in the ether. I want friends that, you know, I can see and sit across the table with, and, you know, I can cook for, and, you know, have them spend the night. I don't have any interest in that. But when my book was published, and not having a publicist or, you know, being able to buy ads, I found Facebook was actually quite valuable. And I don't know if I've sold more books or people know more about my writing because of it, but I believe it's been helpful. And I find it fun. You know, just to, you know, I'm not addicted to it. I don't, you know, scroll forever. I usually will look at it in the morning. If I see something new, I might like something. I wish there was another, what do you call it? Not emoji, but, you know, instead of being able to say like or love or wow or whatever, sometimes I just want to show enthusiasm for something someone has posted. But I see some of the most beautiful photographs on Facebook. I love how, you know, people are able to compose something, you know, really brief. I can tell you, anyone who posts 16 or 57 photographs, or like David did at one time, 75.
Yeah, my
I looked at yours just because I know you, but I would never normally. I will not do that. And anything that's really long, I don't read on Facebook. But I feel I've actually been able to make some friends, and generally it goes off Facebook, and then, you know, and we communicate directly.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, I think I probably have had the same experience where it starts with social media and ends up in a kind of friendship, and then through correspondence we get to know each other more. But I do think that people are more apt to share their private selves through correspondence more so than they do on you know, social media, whatever it might be. You know, my photo dumps of 75 photos or whatever. I don't often even give explanations of, you know, why they're meaningful to me a lot of the time. But in correspondence, I really try to give a part of myself. And I think it's that sort of sense of reciprocal interest that you experience through correspondence that is really what attracts me to letter writing or email writing. And social media, I just don't know how to stay in touch with several hundred people. And I don't, you know, it's just endless scrolling. And but that's me. A lot of people love it, and they get a lot more out of it than I get from it. And a lot of people aren't willing to correspond. They don't have the time. But for me, that would be the difference, I think. But anyways, let's move on to the history of our own correspondence and how it came about. I had read Karen's memoir immediately followed by her novel. And as a novelist myself, I was particularly interested in that book, and I was so blown away by it. I considered it, I think I told you I thought it was a masterpiece. And
I quote you regularly.
Please do. That's another good part of correspondence, right? You get these quotable moments. But I had never met Karen before. This is the first time at the conference that we've actually met.
Yeah.
I am not shy to reach out to writers who I admire and whose books that I read that become instantly meaningful to me. And I've done it with a number of writers. Most of them ignore my emails, but I still have no problem writing to them because I think they deserve to know. How many times do your readers reach out to you and say, you know, maybe they give you 5-star rating or something like that, but they never reach out to you. And I think for me as a writer, I appreciate, I think, how other writers, might feel about being contacted. So I contacted Karen, and she was very kind and generous and open, and showed an interest in communicating with me, and we've been corresponding regularly, at least once a week, twice a week.
Oh, it's more than that.
Sometimes, yeah. But, and the reason that we do it is that we have a lot in common as writers, but just as people, we connected that way. And that's, when you find someone who is interested in writing, in literature, and she's also a good person, you really want to try to make them a part of your lives. And I don't know really how else to do that when you live in fairly remote places than through correspondence. So we just happen to be, to correspond very regularly.
Yeah, we really do.
But it's not something that I think everybody has to do or anything like that. But I think it's sort of one of the perks of doing what we do, I guess.
Yeah, it is.
So, anyway, did you want to?
Yeah, and of course with this newfangled communications email, you can send things back and forth, and I wouldn't want anyone to think that when David and I are corresponding, we're only talking about literary matters. No. He's going to the dentist, or he's got a problem with his cat's allergies. I'm just coming back from my hula class, and I just burned the soup or something. I mean, it'll be about our daily lives, and I particularly enjoyed this summer when David was writing about his gardening. He did quite a bit of gardening, and I was envious. I wouldn't say jealous, because I have plenty of land, but I don't garden at all. But he had a fine harvest of eggplant and tomatoes, and I only wished he were a neighbor, and that I could collect some of his bounty. Yeah. But he has been really enjoyable, and thankfully my husband isn't jealous. And sometimes he'll come and he'll see, I'm answering something. He said, "Oh, you're writing to David again." I said, "Yeah." I push him aside. And it's like, yeah, I just have to respond to this because David asked me something. So.
No, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. We don't always or even that often talk about writing, but we know that we can.
Yeah,
that
I think this.
If we feel that we need to or that we want to, we'll get an honest response, a supportive response. And again, that's not something that you can count on from everyone who doesn't write or who doesn't appreciate literature in the same way that you do. And again, when you find someone who has those interests the same as you, it's a great thing, I think. Yeah. How about for you? Is this correspondence equal in value to in-person interaction? And does it really matter to you?
It does matter to me because I really like in-person interaction. I think it's called being social.
Yes.
And I am a sociable person. I've always been. As it happens, I live in the middle of nowhere. I have no friends nearby, but it's what my life is, and I've certainly adjusted to it. So I feel in one sense being able to correspond with you regularly gives me a lot, but I would much prefer you were in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
We'd have lunch together.
Right.
I would be inviting you to dinner.
Right.
We would
sharing my vegetables.
Yeah, but sharing your vegetables because I don't grow anything, which would be really nice. But sometimes when you grow up, you find out you can't have everything, and so I feel it's nice to have made a friend. It is really what it comes down to, and that I feel that Yeah, we literally met the first time yesterday,
yesterday.
but we know a lot about each other,
Right.
and our families and pasts already, because it's been an open sharing, not a prying or whatever, but just really getting to know someone, and you can in this world, in this time, get to know someone through correspondence, and that's been really good, for me.
And I'm guessing that you don't know a lot of writers in the area where you live.
Ha ha ha.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah. I mean, I live in Kanazawa, which has several 100,000 people, but I don't know any other writers there, and I hardly know anyone who even likes literature all that
Yeah,
much.
no. Where I live, well, if there is, it's the best kept secret. I don't know anyone who's writing in English or Japanese, and in my area there are no other foreigners for sure. And the people I see on a daily basis, I go to the pool every day. I have a hula class and the members. What some people know and they celebrate that I'm a writer, but they don't read English, and just when I'm with them, I'm not a writer. I'm just
Right.
another person in the pool or at the
Karen,
hula at the hula class. Yeah.
But you and I both live in places where we don't know a lot of other writers or any writers, and I've moved around a lot in my adult life, and I've always lived very far from sort of the centers of the publishing universe, and so this sort of, I don't want to call it remoteness, but or isolation, but not being around other writers for so much of my life, I think that I really do value correspondence with some literary aspect to it, because I don't have it in my immediate surroundings, in my immediate life. So again, I think that's one reason we're here talking about it today, because that matters.
Yeah,
to us.
it does. I agree.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go to the next one. All right. The professional aspect of literary correspondence. Does it help you as a writer, do you think?
Being in correspondence, I think, more than say, getting ideas or anything like that. I always feel like that's my least problem. I have plenty of ideas, but sometimes just being able to express something, or and I don't like to talk about anything that I'm writing. I feel like I'm going to write it, or I'm not going to write it. But sometimes just sort of like laying the ground for it. And I don't even know if I'm doing that. But when we're in correspondence, when I write you, it's almost like I'm preparing myself for the next piece I'm going to write. Yeah.
That's interesting. That sort of brings up this notion of audience. The people that you communicate with, do you consider those people your audience when you're setting out to write an article or a book? Do you have someone in mind? Are they your correspondents?
Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't at all. Sometimes I just, I'm thinking about something, and I want to put it on paper, and I just have to do it. And I might think, what will David think of it, or what will my children think, or my husband, or a friend in America, or whatever. But I don't think of the audience so much. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and especially now that I'm writing on Medium,
Right.
you have really almost like no idea of who your audience might be. When I was writing for the Japan Times, I had a pretty good idea of my audience. Same writing for Chunichi Shimbun, but with the writing I'm doing these days, not so much. And with my books, I didn't think about the audience as much as thinking, what do I want to give readers in general?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think that I write entirely for myself. I always have, and I think I probably always will. It's just how I developed as a writer, I think. But certainly the people that I correspond with who are writers or who are lovers of literature, I think that probably in the back of my mind, I don't want to disappoint them, you know? And so I think the people I correspond with, I do keep in mind to a certain extent. I mean, I would not consciously think, oh, what would Karen think about this or whatever, you know? That's not what I mean. But you want to set the bar as high as possible whenever you set out to write something when you're writing.
Right.
But when you factor that into everything, you don't want to disappoint certain people.
Yeah.
Like with my parents, there's nothing I can do that they wouldn't feel disappointed with in some way.
Interesting.
And there's some other people who are close to me who I can kind of say that about too. Like I don't worry about it. But the people that I correspond with who are also good friends, they are people that I think about a little bit. I want to write something that they would like. They would,
yeah,
you know.
I understand that too. Yeah.
So, how about furthering your career?
I don't have a career. I never think of myself as having something like a career. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I mean, what I'm doing now is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows what I'll do in the future?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. I don't think I have ever asked anyone I correspond with for any kind of professional sort of favors, like introductions to agents or to magazines or publishers or anything like that, or even for blurbs, I think. But I kind of wonder if that's stupid of me not to do that. Because I know a lot of people who do that.
Yeah.
But I just don't want the people that I correspond with to think that that's the impetus for why
Right.
I've reached out to them.
Right.
Even if they're in incredible positions as writers and in the publishing world. But I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I just don't have I'm not wired that way.
Yeah. Right.
So
But your books are blurbed.
they're blurred,
yeah.
but these aren't people that I knew. These are strangers that I approached or
it.
that my publisher approached on my behalf.
Got it.
So, but I have to say that some of those blurb requests have also resulted in some form of correspondence.
Oh, that's good.
Or I've been able to meet those people later, even though I'd never met them before or any of that. And the same is true when people have asked me for blurbs. I've often, struck up a friendship with those people, even though we'd never had any sort of relationship at all prior to that. And so being in that position is kind of very special, and it's not a position that I want to abuse.
Right.
But it's nice because if you ask for a blurb, come the holidays, you have another chance to write to those people and say thank you. Or,
that's true.
And it's another way to sort of keep things going, keep a conversation going. So I think that's a nice opportunity if you have it. But let's move on to the next thing. Okay, other writers.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Just I was.
So other writers we've corresponded with.
Right.
This with Roger Pulvers.
Right. This photo shows me blissed out meeting Roger Pulvers for the first time. And some of you at least will know Roger Pulvers. He's a novelist, an essayist, memoirist, playwright, theater director, film director. In fact, he's just wrapped up on a feature film that I forget where, here in Japan. He's a recipient of the Order of the Golden Ribbon or some imperial recognition for his cultural contributions. And I knew of Roger, through his being in Japan, and he also wrote for the Japan Times for a while, actually after I left the Japan Times. But when my memoir came out, I can't even remember what prompted me to write him, but I did, and out of the blue. I didn't know him, I'd never met him, I didn't know anyone who knew him. And he answered right away and responded. It was very friendly. And I asked him if I sent him a copy of my memoir, if he would give me a blurb for it. And he was very busy at the time, and he said, well, he would try to get around to it, but he wanted me to know in advance that if he didn't think he could blurb it, which means say something good about it, then he wouldn't say anything. And of course, I totally accepted that. But yeah, within days, he got back to me. He'd finished the memoir, absolutely loved it, and wrote a really nice blurb. But a statement that I could use, a review. And we kept in contact, though again we'd never met. But at one point we were emailing back and forth, corresponding, and he said, "As you continue to write, and I hope you do." And then something else, and I forget what it was. But after I finished that email, I had the feeling of an expectation from him in terms of my writing. I had written a memoir, it was well received. I just thought maybe that's the first and last book I'll ever publish. I don't know, but then I thought about it, and for some reason it got me to dig out. I literally dig out the manuscript for my novel, which I had abandoned completely years ago. I mean, more than 20 years ago. And I took it out thinking, well, I'll take a look at it. Maybe I have, 70 pages. But I found I had 200 pages. I started rereading it. I didn't recognize the characters. I thought, you created that character? How did you do that? And I didn't know what they were going to do next because I hadn't finished it. But I was intrigued, and more than that, I felt I cared about these characters, and I felt it was almost too bad I had abandoned them. And I decided, no, I'm going to finish this novel, and I did. And as David said, it's a masterpiece.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I said before, I have no issues really with reaching out to writers that I admire. Just sort of take the plunge. And a couple years ago, a regular correspondence sort of sprang up between me and the Tanizaki scholar and translator Tony Chambers, and who lives in San Diego, which is where my brother and his wife also live. And so every time I go back to the States, I go through San Diego, stay at my brother's house, and I've had the opportunity to spend some time with Tony. And it's all thanks to the correspondence that we. Yeah. I don't remember who initiated it. It might have actually been him, but it was through him, through his kindness, that he introduced me to Keiichiro Hirano, and we two have had a regular but less frequent correspondence with each other. And most recently, I reached out to a Dutch photojournalist whose book about the Mekong Delta in 1993 had an oversized impact on my life, just as a person, but also as a writer, because for the last 20 years, I've had a novel set in the Mekong, on the Mekong River that I've never quite finished. But she was very important to me. Her book was, and I told her this, and we have struck up a correspondence since then, and I just feel very, very grateful to have been able to connect with her. And I have to say that I doubt that I could have struck up a correspondence with any of these people had I not first had a novel published. I just wouldn't have had the confidence, and I didn't have the confidence immediately. It definitely took me some time to kind of, I don't know, realize that I was a writer, right? To accept that and to approach people as such. But now that I have 3 novels published, I'm really not shy at all about reaching out to people. But you know, reaching out to writers, anyone who publishes, everyone's experience with writing is so different, and the publishing industry is changing so just constantly that in correspondence, just hearing about their own journeys is always a learning experience for me. And whenever they share that, it's a moment of generosity that I'm very grateful for, and I try to reciprocate whenever I can. And that's, again, one of the really nice things I think about corresponding with other writers. We're running short on time.
All right. Well, we're getting there.
How do you want to do this? Do you want to skip 7?
No, just you. I remember in our correspondence, I've often urged David to do more talks or involvements.
Yeah, I forgot my photo is
here. And he doesn't embrace it quite as much as I do. And this photo just shows him speaking at an event, the Writers in Kyoto. So tell us how that was.
That must have been in 2015 or so, right after my first novel came out. And I was in Kyoto giving a talk, as you said, to members of Writers in Kyoto. And it was my first time giving a talk as a writer in Japan. And it doesn't feel like that long ago, but it was quite a while ago. But first of all, it was, of course, having had a novel published that gave me the confidence to start trying to correspond with other writers. But the correspondence also gave me the confidence to try to do more in my own literary community, as small as it is, as limited as my opportunities have been. You know, I'm now trying to organize a literary event in Kanazawa for next year or the year after, a pretty big one. And the publications that I have and the correspondence that I've had with other writers has definitely emboldened me to reach out to people I wouldn't normally reach out to. And I've had some good results so far, and I don't think I would have had those results had I not had the sort of experiences that I have and just being willing to reach out to people. And we've had this conversation a lot about how important it is to hustle your work. You've always got to be hustling.
Hustle.
And I don't think either one of us particularly enjoys it, but it's just, it's what you have to do.
Yeah.
And again, that years and years of correspondence with other writing friends has helped me out a lot in that regard. I'd be lost without the regular practice of talking writing with other writers. I never used to be able to talk about writing. I was a Japanese studies major in college. I never took a literature course in college. I took humanities courses, which were like literature courses. But when I graduated and I decided I wanted to try to write, I had no clue how to talk about it. And these correspondences, I've just learned so much from much smarter people, much more experienced people, all through correspondence, you know. I have a friend in Turkey I've been corresponding. He's a published writer in American and Turkey. We've been corresponding for over 20 years. And an English friend in Portugal. We've been corresponding for over 20 years, a published writer. These relationships mean a lot to me. And I think and I hope that they could be of real benefit to all of you if you don't have those kinds of relationships with people. So anyway.
How are we for time?
We're running short on time.
Oh, yep.
Okay. So Do we want to go to the
Just-
Q&A?
Yeah, just,
We
what-
have this,
oh, yeah,
but I don't know that we need.
the closing statement.
Yeah,
But
I'm okay.
well, I'd like to,
Yeah,
interact
open
with
it
the
up.
audience,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, we have 9 minutes, so.
Maybe you
any
just flip to
questions?
the last slide.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, Q&A.
Yeah, question/comment. I'm in a Discord server with a bunch of other writers, and we talk to each other all the time, like on the daily, and about writing about anything. But it
That's
is
great.
like a big community of like a lot of different like
Oh,
writers.
yeah.
Would you consider that? Because correspondence or more social media? Because like, I've gotten somewhat close to like a few specific members of the server, but like we all are just like. I think there's like over 100 people in the server, and half of them are
Wow.
inactive.
Wow.
So, but like, what would you like consider that like on the spectrum of like correspondence to social media?
Do you know about that?
Does
I-
That kind of thing?
does
I'm
that
trying to
sound-
picture what it is. It's social media? Is it like a,
How would you
is it like a
describe it?
Facebook page?
It's like, or chat room, chat group?
Is it like a chat room?
Oh,
Oh.
chat room,
With a
I
lot
di-
of people, and most of us are based in Japan.
Yeah.
Are based in Japan?
Yes,
Or
Ah.
at least
all in, like,
we have been
rural
in,
areas.
most of us have been in Japan
Ah.
at some point and found it in Japan. And then, like,
Ah,
left or something.
and you meet on a daily basis?
We talk like
Online.
whenever.
When you want to,
whenever
oh, interesting.
you have something you want to decide.
Right.
Like we have a book club. There's
Right.
People that do D&D, and we for a while we had a writers workshop
Uh-huh.
that a few of us did, but it was like some people do this, some people do this, some people do this, but we're all in one place.
Right,
online.
right.
I think that's something we never really considered.
Yeah, at all.
I think that's the chat room experience, which I
I
think
guess so,
could be
yeah.
very
Yeah.
valuable. And
Yeah.
if you're doing it every day or almost every day, I mean, that is a kind of correspondence, I think.
It is.
It's a lot of it is kind of just like putting messages into the void and something.
Ah.
So
Interesting.
it's not like super directive.
Yeah, and it's not being recorded also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
You
disappears.
can search the history.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Oh,
There's,
okay.
like a chat history.
Oh,
You
okay.
can pin. You can make like certain messages like priority, and like everybody can see them, like type things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Make events and things like that.
Yeah.
It is very community oriented, but I do really like the one-to-one correspondence that like.
You're
the
sharing more of
type
your private selves
Yeah.
Right.
through correspondence. And in a chat room, it depends on the person, but I would guess probably not as much.
Yeah. Well.
Let's get to the gentleman in the back.
Yeah.
He's got his hand
I
up.
just wanted to speak to this as well. I'm
Yeah.
also part of a couple Discord writing communities.
Ah.
One is quite small. There are about, I think, 10 of us. There's maybe 13 in the group. A couple people are on and off. And that one's very active. I know everyone there really well, to the point where we share pictures of our daily lives. I've met several of them in real life, but we all started as anonymous writers. And it's been amazing. And I would say there's a difference between that kind of community and correspondence in itself as from a written form or even from an email form. I think there's something that's more formal in writing a letter or in writing an email than there is being a part of that kind of chat room or community.
Right.
Discord's amazing in that you can hop on a voice channel and you can chat with someone in real life, or you can just write them a message or write them a private message. There's a lot of flexibility there that's quite outstanding for this kind of keeping in touch, keeping in
Yeah.
connection, and building connections. But I would say it is different than a one-on-one written correspondence.
Right, right.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
One of the things that I find is that I correspond with another individual, with two other individuals actually, but separately. And if you correspond one-to-one, you develop kind of, we know the same kind of things, and we can talk about things on a much, much, much deeper level.
Right.
We can focus on exactly what we want to talk about with the one-to-one correspondence.
Right.
Whereas if you're in a group or even a setting like this, the value is diversity, because you got all these different points of view. Right? You can't kind of like focus on what you really want to focus on.
Right,
So
right, right.
You have the same
I think
experience.
I mean, I feel like we have a relationship, as opposed to being, part of, a group with just sharing. I feel we have a relationship, we're developing a relationship, and that's what's important. Not that I can, just talk. I have a husband. I can talk to him all the time. But, with David, there is a different sense of what's going on. And also, and as everyone who is a writer knows, when you write, you're always choosing words. When you're talking, you don't do that quite as much. And I'm not saying, everyone speaks off the cuff or whatever. But, yeah, it's a different experience, I find, yeah. Suzanne? Oh, yeah, oh.
Okay,
Yeah,
quick question.
that- yeah.
Are you saving your correspondence for posterity?
No. I mean,
You don't?
No. For posterity. I'm not thinking, oh, this is going to go out to the public one day.
Yeah.
But of course I save everything.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I have,
Yeah.
I mean, hundreds probably.
We have a lot.
A
We have a
lot,
lot.
but-
I save them, to me, I save
Yeah,
everything.
but I have
so it doesn't-
thousands upon thousands.
Yeah.
Maybe someday.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about this before. How would you feel, Karen and David, about publishing your correspondence while you're both still alive?
And one of us maybe not so long. Yeah, it would have to be heavily edited.
Heavily edited, yes. What are they going on about here? Like, yeah.
Yeah, other people might not get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually, when I was looking for letters from these writers, it came up that there's a writer, and I wasn't familiar with her, who has donated her email to a university library, and I think it's one of the first email collections that's been donated. Because, of course, people are not writing actual letters as much as before. This is not the time of Henry James, and I saw an actual handwritten letter or even typed letter in a survey in the UK. They found that people had not written more than 5 in 10 years, which is not a lot when you think about these other people who literally have volumes of their letters.
Yeah.
2 minutes, yeah.
How would you recommend phrasing a blurb request to another writer?
You're probably better. Well, you've done it. You've
done
you
it,
probably have some. Oh, actually, Suzanne did her presentation last year at the Writers' Conference on blurbing.
Yeah.
Let's ask you.
Just ask politely and respectfully, and maybe show some familiarity with
Yeah.
their work.
Yeah, definitely that.
Praise them.
Praise never hurts. Yeah,
Give
but
them plenty of.
I think you want to keep it short. If it's a super long letter, they may not bother with it. But if it's short and they want to know more, then they can ask for more, and that would be a time to really kind of go into what your book is about. But giving a very short synopsis of your book, 2 or 3 sentences maybe, in addition to praising their work, and being very respectful is, yeah. Yeah, but it really depends on the person.
Yeah.
So how they'll react.
I think we're at an end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks so
Thank you
much,
so
everyone.
much. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.